So if you can recall in the last video that I had up, basically we had a low compression in, or no compression in number 2 cylinder, which triggered the P0302 code, right? So I did a relative compression check, and basically it told me that, it verified that I had issues with that cylinder. So what I did with the scope that I had, which is a 2-channel HS502, I put up the overlay and I wanted to like figure out where the compression was going. So based on what I'm seeing here, right, I got the sync up, which is the red channel, and the blue channel is the relative compression. As you can see, basically I'm missing a hump right here. This, and the firing order is 1, 2, 3. So based on what I'm seeing here, it's telling me that when number 2 cylinder is on compression, number 3 is on intake. Yes, it is on the inlet valve. Supposed to be open, and on number 1, the exhaust valve is supposed to be open also. So what does that mean? That could mean anything. That could mean that the compression is being, compressed and going into these valves and coming back, depending on how bad it is, it could be going back to the exhaust, like dumping to the engine, or it can be going, coming back through the intake manifold, right? So I'm gonna just verify real quick the firing order and what PSI I'm supposed to have in each cylinder, right? And using the servo manual, and probably that will give me some guidance to see when I do a hard compression check to see what compression I'm supposed to be getting. So let me just scroll through here real quick. Hold on, let me see what page is it. All right, cool. So right now the firing order is 1, 2, 3, right? The compression is supposed to be at 254, right? Maximum, and minimum at 251, with a 7 psi difference between each cylinder. So that means when I do a manual compression test, I want to see something around that range or close to it, right? Or at least be, if it's losing compression, is at least be uniform across. But technically, I'm not going to see that because I have a low cylinder compression in number 2, right? So I just going to go on dig a little deeper to figure out where this compression is going, just to verify, so I can let the customer know, I believe you need some valves, or you may need to do something with the head, or I'm not sure if it's even, it could be the crankshaft, the camshaft. It could be anything on the top of the head, right? What else can I see? Matter of fact, what I'm going to do is let me pull out my 4-channel scope and hook up to the vacuum hose and exhaust, and probably I can visually see it and be able to show him when he pops up, right? So let me see if I can do that. I'm going to hook up to the dipstick. I'm going to hook up to the oil cap. So if I'm seeing a spike in the sump, that means it's rings issues that I'm having, right? Which is in the block. And if I'm seeing extra spike up on the oil cap side, basically it's a valve, but I won't be able to tell which valve it is. But remember, I have an idea that it has something to do like around the intake valve. So that I'm just trying to narrow down where this is going. It's late in the night. It's like what, 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. Out here just doing some little testing, and I'm working on bad cars. When you work on bad cars, you hone your skills and you get better, and then you can diagnose cars quicker, better, faster, by working on cars that basically is junk or going to be junked. And eventually, I step my game up. So let me press play here, set up my trigs, right? I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Set a trigger. I'm going to go start. I'm not going to start the vehicle. I'm just going to crank it. want to switch it off. Definitely gotta start this vehicle and burn off half of that fuel from the injector. All right. So let's see. The blue is still the relative compression on the battery. The red is still the sink, and the yellow is on my, where yellow is? Yellow is on the oil cap. Alright, so let's see. Let's go do it again. We're gonna set the same thing up. We're gonna get a peak to peak. So every time you see the red spike, that'll be number one being fired from that 720 degrees between these two, right? Firing orders 1, 2, 3, back to 1, 2, 3, and so on. And as I said, the yellow is the, let's see if I can make this bigger. So the yellow is the oil cap, right? And the green, okay. Let's put the green is the on the sump. I wonder why I'm seeing this though. It's like it's mimicking the same thing that the crank is doing. Actually, the both of them is doing the same thing. Let's put some filters on it real quick. Probably just to clean up a little bit. Let's zoom in here. So it's basically like mimicking each other. Whatever so every time number one comes up, this one comes up, this one comes up, the peak. When number two is low, 2 is low, basically I'm not getting no spike. So it's not going down in the sump. Because I would have definitely got like, this would have been low and I would have got like a major spike here. Just like these. As I said, the vehicle is not overheating. So is it really going into coming back to the intake? It leads me to believe that it is. Let's pull up. Let's take a picture of this real quick. I'm gonna snap this here using snippet with new. Right, we're just gonna grab this. I'm gonna put it here. I'm gonna open this out like this. So what I'm trying to see is if I put an overlay, number of cylinders is 3. Sync off number 1. Fire nose 1, 2, 3. Let's press go. And why this dog doing? Be quiet, man. Can't you see I'm taping? Alright, so number 1, I'm here. I'm on compression. Hold on, wait. Alright, let's set this up over differently. See, I'm on this line and I'm on this line right here. Right? I want to put this rule here. So that's when he's firing, like before top dead center, right? I have my rules in the wrong spot. So he's firing just before top dead center, right? So no, that's incorrect. The spark will fire before top dead center, or just as like on top dead center, like directly on top, if that, right? Normally it fire like 10 to 15 degrees before. So this is correct, actually. This is correct. Right, so he's firing on top dead center, right? And then he's expanding here. So if he's expanding there, I gotta put this here, correct? So this is when he's gonna expand, not this one. So I gotta move this here. Right, so when he comes up on top, he's gonna fire and he's gonna expand. Then he's gonna go into exhaust. Number one is gonna be exhaust. So when number one is on exhaust, number two is gonna be on compression, just like we saw on the Hscope, right? Number two is supposed to be on compression right now, and basically you see nothing. Right, number two is supposed to be on compression, and right there, number three will be in inlet. So it looks like number two is losing via the valves, not the. But then if it's like via the valves, then am I supposed to see it on the oil cap? That's a good question. I probably gotta do more Brian Steckler classes and John Thornton classes and Bernie. Yeah, but I'm supposed to be seeing more of a spike here. So I got my pulse sensor hooked onto my inlet valve right behind the throttle. I also got one on the, that one is from Roki, and this one is from Jarhead, as in the muffler, right? So I'm monitoring the exhaust valves and the intake valves while getting the signal off of number one coil, and I'm going to do my relative compression test off my battery poles. Basically I'm going to AC couple that, right? So let's, crank this over and see if we get a capture. So right now I got a trigger on. Let's start the vehicle. It's kind of hard to do the press the gas pedal when you're cranking because this is push start. So I'm just gonna just crank and see what's going. All right, that should be enough. Let's switch it off. I gotta start the vehicle up and make sure I got all that fluid out. Right, so let's save this capture. That's the first thing you must do. So the red trace is the, let me just move this to the side. The red trace is the sync, as I said. Let's zoom in and get a capture, and I'm just gonna take this right here. Alright, so every time you see this this spike right here, this is the number one coil being fired, right, or being command on. Let's see if we can get this a little bit like that, right? I don't want to spread it out too much. Alright, so as I said, every time you see that red hump, that's when number one is being fired. Let's close this out so I can get more space. And so peak to peak from this coil, this spike here to this spike on red, that's number one being fired, right? The yellow is the intake valves, right? But if you can see, let's raise this up a little bit. You see I'm getting a deep pull on this one here, right? So right now, this, when you see this spike here, this blue spike, this is the compression. So this is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So right now this spike that you see in here is the low compression in the number 2 cylinder, right? And we're looking to see exactly where the compression is going, right? So right now I'm seeing a deep pull on my intake for number 2, right? But I'm also seeing it look like, kind of fuzzy thing going on with the exhaust here. Let's pull some rules down. Let me just spread this out a little more so it don't confuse you. So every time when number 2 when I'm supposed to get a high peak like number 1 or number 3, you're seeing a drop, a deep pull in the intake, but you're also seeing a high peak on the exhaust valve. So from what it looks like this vehicle has some valve issues. All right, so we're gonna crank the vehicle again. All right, we're gonna switch it off. We're gonna save that capture as number 3. All right, so we got the next waveform up. Let me see if we can analyze this real quick. As I said, it's really late and I need to wrap this up. All right, so I got my sync on number 1. Okay, we could take the sync off because I got my rulers up. Let's take this off real quick. So, let's put this to the side here. Right, so the yellow is the intake, the green is the exhaust, and let's see if we can, and the blue is the relative compression. So right now we got a dead hole at number 2. Right, so we gotta figure out where the compression is going. But this is a trick that I use, or actually the only thing you're supposed to use when you're doing this, trying to figure where it's going. I wanna take off the exhaust for now. I'm just gonna analyze the intake. So we gotta go, matter of fact, let me take the relative compression off also for now. All right, so with the intake waveform on, as I said, I'm using a pulse sensor. You're gonna go 360, right? And what you gotta do now, you gotta go to the right for the sync. So if I got this is remember on the relative compression. Let's put this back up. On my relative compression, right? This was my number 1. But now to figure out where my number 1 lies on the intake side, I gotta, switch things around a little bit. So you're gonna go 360, and then you're gonna go 1 to the right. So this is my new number 1 for my intake. So this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3. Correct? So let's go again. So we're going 360, then we're gonna go across by 1. So this is number 1, 2, and 3. Now, when we're doing the exhaust, it's done differently. You gotta go the opposite direction. So we're gonna put on the exhaust now. Let's see, put this on. All right, so we're gonna put this exhaust on here. So we're gonna do the same 360, and we're gonna go to the left. So this is my new number 1 here. So this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, right? Oh, let me make sure I'm not talking crap. So I'm watching the pull. No, I'm supposed to be watching. I'm watching this. So this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3. So what's happening here? It looks like when the compression, let's put this back up, when number 2 compression is, when it's coming up on compression number 2, it seems that it's coming up on number 2 that the compression is leaking into number 1 exhaust and number 3 intake. That's what I'm seeing here. All right, so what we could do also to make this a little easier, right? What I can do, I could use my piston overlay, right? Chart. Let's put this up. Let's choose 1, 2, 3. Sync on number 1. We want to put this up right here. So we still sync on number 1. Let's see. So if we take this blue line, this blue waveform, put it looking for number 2. So right now number 2 is supposed to be on compression, which is right here. But check this out. And number 2 is on compression. Number 3 is on intake. Oh, you dig? And number 1 is on exhaust. So that's why you see the compression leaking into the number 3 inlet valve and number 1 exhaust valve. Basically, that's what I'm saying. Because remember, my firing order would have been 1, 2, 3 back to 1, but in the inlet, this would be my number 1 here. This would be number 2, this number 3, and on my exhaust, this would be number 1. Number 2, number 3. That's why you're getting that funny waveform here. So basically it's going into my valves. Alright, so I'm gonna add with that information, I'm gonna get the request from the client to tear his engine apart or find out what you want to do, if you want to replace it, and that's it. And probably just use, probably do a leak down test, or probably put the Borescope down in the hole and see what's good. But then I'm going to let him know that he have valve issues, right, where the compression leaking into the valve, right? So I hope this was helpful to others who who never saw these things before.
6 hours later.
I pulled the plugs, and basically this is number 1. It's kind of clean, nice burn, right? And as you can see from the based on the compression, number 1 cylinder had the the best PSI, which was like 240, right? This is number 3 here, right? I believe this was like the 210, right? Can't remember the numbers offhand. So, and this is number 2, as you can see, is really black, so it wasn't getting the combustion, completing the combustion like it's supposed to. So basically it was getting excess gas going to this cylinder, right, and fogging up the plug. So what I'm going to do is just do an in-cylinder test, just for, I said, for my knowledge. Customer said he's going to replace the engine, so I'm just going to do an in-cylinder test real quick so I can get a capture of what is going on. Alright, so let me show you my setup, right? I got the number 1 coil hooked up to a dummy coil, right? I got my spark plugs in, number 1, number 2, right? Just got my spark tester hooked up to ground. Number 1 sink is on the coil, right? You got to do it because the ECM is not going to recognize that I have the coil on. I have my pulse sensor hooked onto my intake behind the throttle. I got my in-cylinder hooked up, right? And also I got my relative compression hooked on to my battery pole, AC couple. So we're gonna start this vehicle. We're gonna crank it. We're gonna do a cranking test, a idle test, and a snap throttle test, and see what captures we get. Right, so get on crank. Alright, so let's see what we get here. We already know that the engine needs to be dismantled or replaced, so we're just gonna check the rest of the I'm just gonna go in cylinder just because we're trying to figure out exactly where the problem was occurring and what is happening. Right, so we're gonna just take a snapshot of right here. So every time you see that number 1 fires is the red trace, right? And this is number 2, so it wouldn't line up right now. This is number 1 sync, so technically I could take that off because this is the wrong sync I'm on. I should have synced on number 2. So let's take this off. So peak to peak here, or supposed to be peak to peak, is when number 2 comes up on compression, right? So let's take this off here. Right, so as you can see, when I'm supposed to be getting a peak here, right, I'm not. It's basically a dead hole. And as you can see here, my towers are not symmetric, right? They are basically like leaning to the right. So is it that is retard? I don't think it's anything to do with timing, but when I look at these waveforms, what I tend to look for is key points. Like right here, this is my exhaust pocket. If you notice, it's really like stretched out, right? So basically it looks like the timing is off, but technically it's not a timing issue that we have here, right? I'm also still getting the deep pull on number 3, right? And that was because number 2 has an issue. Number 2 cylinder has an issue and it's transferring to number 3. So from here now, I'm seeing that my towers is leaning, right? Which also indicates that I have a mechanical problem. Seeing that this is a single cam, whatever happens on the, let's say on the intake cycle, will affect the exhaust and vice versa. So we already know that the compression is leaking into number 2 cylinder, right? So we're gonna compare that to number 1 and see how it's how it stacks up. So let me open this. So we're gonna open number 1 file where I took a capture of the number 1 cylinder, same in cylinder. I'm gonna close this out. Let's just get this smaller so it can fit on the screen, and we're gonna do the same thing again. Alright, so the red is when number 1 is firing. We know that our compression is being lost and going into our valves, right? But look how my tower is looking. For a little bit. Let me see if I can just get it. My towers is actually really clean on this waveform compared to the one we were seeing before. We were seeing that the towers were leaning. You don't gotta do it this precise, but I just like to make sure I get as best as I can. And so from peak to peak is 720, right? This is number 1 cylinder that I'm on, and as I said, number 1, look at my pocket right here. I'm gonna give you right now, nice and smooth. Let's bring down the ruler saying that is basically is under 0 psi, so it's going into a nice vacuum, and it's -3. This is a cranking waveform, but it doesn't look like the last one where it was just pulling across, right? And definitely it's not messing up the compression on number 1, right? So as I said, the definitive, we know that we have valve issue, and as I said, we're gonna tear this apart and probably stick the Borescope into the engine afterwards when we pull it out, just for to see what's good and what if my analysis is correct. Full stop. Right? I'm not even gonna base on this, so I basically let the data guide me. As I said, this is from peak to peak. This is number 2. And as you can tell here, my pocket, I'm looking at my exhaust pocket, it's like it's going into a deeper vacuum right here. right? And plus it's messing up my intake. So we are 0 here, so you still go into 0, and basically you're going to get -7 psi. So it's going into a deeper pull on number 1 exhaust, which we saw on the using the pulse sensor. So to sum it up, right, you can't just take the information and run with it. You have to sit with it for a while and, you know, take it apart, try different ways, let the test be guide you to another test, and that will help you, you know, understand how these waveforms can help you, and also how they can, you know, help you make the right call. And let's see what the PSI is. Basically 31 PSI. So the customer decide to replace the engine. So we're gonna get it removed, pull the engine out with transmission. That way you pop the axles out, and basically that's it. So after that, I will redo my test, and I'll be able to, you know, have a known good save and take it from there. This one is a supercharger. It doesn't have much room, so that's why I'm gonna drop the whole engine and the transmission, work on it outside, and put it back in. So I'm just gonna do a leak down test outside. Right, as I said, the client already made up his mind that he's gonna replace the engine. See the maximum leakage. Right, so we're gonna do an inspection on this engine. Right, this was the engine that was in the vehicle that we took out, the supercharger. Right, I'm gonna go in with the Borescope. Let's record. So this is cylinder number 1. Let me just get it in. Alright, so we in cylinder number 1. Let's take a look at it. You can see a lot of, what is that, like pittons or some scuff marks on the cylinder walls and on the top of the pistons. Right, so you're seeing a lot of like scratches on the cylinder wall. Alright, let's take a look at the valves. This is the exhaust, which is the 3HA. Let's see. This is the intake here. Alright, what else will we see? Alright, let's go the next way, the other way. Alright, so this is the exhaust. It seems like it's intact, but I don't like how this piston is looking. Alright, so let's go into the next cylinder, which is number 2, the one that has the issue. We're gonna go down. Right, man. Wow, it's too clean actually. And it has some scratches on the top of the piston. What is this? It's a piece of metal. And there's another piece. So you see pieces of metal in the cylinder. Let's take a look at the valves. This is an intake valve. Hold on, let's see, that's an exhaust valve. Let's go the next way. So we're just trying to dig deeper to see what is going on with this engine. Oh, there it is. So we have a damaged valve. No wonder why this engine wasn't able to produce enough compression. So you see it there. It's burnt or it broke off. And it happened on the exhaust valve. So we got a burnt exhaust valve. Most likely the seat or the valve is also damaged, and that's the piece that's in the corner. Let me see if I could get a close up. Can I? Trying to get. So that piece of metal that's located down in the chamber. Alright, so let's go into cylinder number 3. Alright, so this is cylinder number 3. You see how the walls are like scratched up? I'm not sure what is this on the piston. It looks like heavy carbon. So no wonder why this engine is like has idle issues. The valves look good. Let's go the next way. Number 3 valve. It doesn't look too bad. Alright, so as I said, no wonder this engine had a hard misfire. This was due to loss of compression and a damaged valve. So the exhaust valve was damaged, and also from the waveform, it did, you know, that jaggy, basically that jaggy waveform that I saw on the exhaust using the pulse sensor. That also indicates that you have like injector problems, you have, you know, like fueling problems. So I would say number 2 injectors is the cause of this, right? Yes, so that's us digging deeper, you know. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment. You know, we don't just, you know, take things for what it is. We like to go a little beyond and deeper, so we could get a better understanding of what we are diagnosing, and, you know, basically get our skills up to the next level. So yeah, thanks for watching. Take it easy.